Good day, this is Terry Difazio, and you're watching Dial It Up. Today on our show, for the second time, we have Rose Sheehan. She's been a past guest, and she will be a guest in the future. But could you please, one more time, tell us your entire title, since I can never remember the entire name of it?
Sure. So my title, Terry, is the Director of the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Other Drug Prevention Coalition. I work for Northeastern Vermont Regional Hospital in St. Johnsbury.
It's good to have you back. I've been really looking forward to this. We pre-planned this. We're going to be speaking about something that the legislature has been wrangling with for quite a while now, and that is marijuana. What it is, what it does, legalization, decriminalization, and things like that. Can I ask you your feeling about this whole issue and why you feel this way?
Sure. I am definitely not someone who's in support of legalization of marijuana. And the reason I feel this way is because I believe that if we legalize marijuana, we will see an increase in use among all people, but especially young people. Mm-hmm. When youth and young adults perceive things as when it's legal, they perceive it as being safe and okay. So we're going to see a rise. And that concerns me. We know that when people use marijuana before the age of 18, they are more likely to become addicted to it, be dependent on it. We also know that it lowers their IQ, and they're more prone to mental health issues. If they already have mental health issues, they become worse. And so I'm really concerned about our youth.
I would tend to agree with that, most of that. In my feeling is, once we legalize something, people think it's safe. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like when you say something is natural or organic. Well, not everything that's natural or organic is safe for you.
Exactly.
For example, what was a good one? Cactus buttons. They're natural, but if you take them, look out is what will happen to you. Do you think that decriminalization would be a better route to go, or are you against that also?
No, I think that we've already done that in Vermont, correct?
I think so, yeah.
And I'm for that. I think that makes sense. I do not think it makes sense for people to go to jail over possessing of marijuana. That doesn't make sense to me. So decriminalization, I'm for, and I'm a big supporter. I believe in medical marijuana.
Yes.
I just do not I don't support recreational use of marijuana.
Okay, could you tell us a bit about the psychotropic effects or psychopharmacology of marijuana? Because I think you and I could probably speak for an hour on the subject, since there's so much about it. And it is such an incredibly complicated drug, to say the least.
So say a little bit more, Terry, what you're looking for.
What does it do? Is it an upper, a downer, an all-arounder? Things like that.
Well, people will tell you that when they smoke marijuana to relax. People say it helps me to chill out, calm down.
Yes.
That's why they use it. People who say they are very anxious, have social anxiety, they say it calms them down. But when you look at many studies that are done, it actually shows that marijuana complicates these things.
Oh, yes.
So, we know that from many studies that it helps with certain medical conditions like cancer, with pain, and those sorts of things. So we know there are some benefits, but we also know that it definitely complicates many mental health disorders, such as schizophrenia. There's studies, lots of studies that show that it can actually contribute to the onset of schizophrenia, or it can, for people who may already have it, it can make it worse. And 2 weeks ago, I was at the State House for Recovery Day. Annually they have this event up there for the day, and they celebrate people in recovery. And so I actually had the opportunity to go. It was my first time, and Shumlin was one of the speakers at this, and I was kind of upset about him being a speaker personally, because it was a day of celebrating recovery, and he's one of the big supporters of legalization of marijuana. So personally, I wasn't happy about that. And so on the way home, I was in a van with a bunch of people from the Kingdom Recovery Center, and I was curious about what some of their views were, because I don't know a lot of them real personally. We just happened to be riding together. And so, I had shared with them my feelings about Shumlin being one of the speakers at this great event, and why I felt that way. And this woman who was in the van turned around and she said, "Well, Rose, I could tell you some things about marijuana and what it's done for me." And I was like, what is she going to say? And she said, she said to me, "Nobody in my family, on my mother's side or my father's side, have any history of mental illness." She says, "But I'm a paranoid schizophrenic from 30 years of marijuana use."
Oh.
And I said, "Oh, there. You just affirmed for me what I already know," but it was nice to be talking to somebody, who has experienced it herself.
Well, many of these drugs, for example, can induce mental health disorders. For example, if you take LSD, you basically induce schizophrenia of sorts, because you overload the prefrontal cortex with serotonin. So when someone comes up to you and says, "Well, marijuana is natural, it isn't addicting," we know that's not true, but can you explain to me how do you tell somebody, "I don't think you're right"? And by the way, when people say it's not physically addicting, I've watched people have mild withdrawal symptoms, and it's nothing like cocaine or alcohol or heroin, but it still is there, isn't it?
Watch people when they don't have it. And I've experienced, not me personally, Terry, but people that I know, people in my family, friends, who are and were marijuana users, and you watch them when they don't have it. That's when you can really see the impact. And they don't see it themselves, but they are extremely anxious, agitated, and it's like somebody who smokes cigarettes. Yeah. It's sort of the same thing. If they do not have their nicotine, they're very cranky, they experience the withdrawal, and that's dependence, that's addiction. And I've witnessed it personally with many people.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of women who were heavy users, and when they went through withdrawal, they seemed like they had a mild cold, and they did shake a little bit.
Yeah.
Nothing like I said, like the heroin addicts or coke addicts that I had, or even the alcoholics I had to deal with, that was much more violent. And people seem to slough these off, whereas you and I take these things rather seriously. So
when you look at the number of young people in treatment in Vermont, Terry, most of the people young people in treatment are in it for cannabis use.
Yeah, when I was a counselor, I saw far more alcoholics, but as time went on, I saw marijuana use increase. In my experience, I'll ask you about your experience also. I found it harder to get a marijuana smoker to stop smoking than an alcoholic to stop drinking. Definitely,
for sure. I mean, they'll describe it as something that helps them. And they when they look at it, because most people who smoke marijuana also drink, smoke cigarettes, and who whatever else, and they see this as the lesser of any of the problem. So it is much harder. They don't see it as that bad. It's really difficult to get them to recognize it as a real problem in their life. So it is a real challenge.
Yeah, and of course, you'll always get the person that says, "Well, I know a guy or I know a gal," and there are people who can socially drink, and there are people who can socially smoke a joint. But when it becomes a problem, it really becomes a problem.
That's right. And you know, that brings me to the day that I was at the recovery celebration. One of the representatives, Zuckerman?
Yes.
Okay,
yeah.
Zuckerman.
I think so.
I think that's his name. He also spoke briefly, and he said, if anyone in the room is interested in talking to me and sharing with me why you feel, your feelings about legalization, please come and find me. So I did. And so I was sharing with him why I'm not a supporter of it, and my concerns about young people and all people, really. And he said, well, Rose, he goes, most people can use it and not have any problem with it. And I said, well, that's true of alcohol also.
Yeah.
Most people who drink alcohol do not have a problem with it.
Right.
They are not alcoholic. They do not have the disease alcoholism.
Right.
So what are we saying? That this doesn't matter? The people who have these issues, it's real serious for them.
Oh, absolutely. Yes,
so
I agree.
It just, that reasoning doesn't sit well with me.
Yeah, it's always this thing if you tell somebody you're against legalization, what would you rather be, alcoholics? Well, I said, yeah, maybe. maybe it would harm them enough so they'd stop, Uh-huh. And of course that's actually part of the reason too, is I don't think marijuana has the immediate behavioral effects as some other drugs, but it still does have some, correct?
Correct. And that's kind of brings me to cigarettes also. Like, yeah. I believe that's one of the real dangers of tobacco use,
exactly.
is that it takes a long time before people get harmed by it. So it's kind of like, yeah, whatever. It's easy for people to get hooked on it and to suffer the consequences of it, because it happens for most people over a long period of time, not
mm-hmm.
everyone.
Right.
And so that is really sad. People are doing something that they really don't believe is harmful to them, and then when it hits them really hard.
Now, how many? I used to know this and I forgot it. How many chemicals are there in marijuana? It has to be hundreds, isn't there?
I'm not sure. I don't know the exact number. I would say hundreds. It's certainly not as many as tobacco.
Right. We
know that tobacco products have over 4,000 chemicals in them. In marijuana, it's not like that. But tell me, why does it make it any healthier, say if I have hundreds of chemicals versus 4,000?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't get that reasoning either. But then again, we're slightly different.
So,
we've been in the field for a while.
Terry, before I came in here, I was reading something that
okay.
I want to mention because I think
it's
interesting.
Yeah.
So, and I was reading this on Smart Approaches to Marijuana on their website. They had attached the marijuana health assessment that was just released in January by the Department of Health. And one of the things that they mentioned in there was they were bringing attention to the fact that way back when we found out that lead in paint mm-hmm. And other things caused a decrease in IQ, what did we do?
We banned it.
We banned it.
Absolutely.
Yes. And we know from many studies that people who use marijuana before the age of 18 have a lower IQ score. And I'm terrible at remembering the numbers, so I encourage anybody to go to the website if you want the exact numbers. But it was pretty significant by the age of 30. SAMVT, so SAMVT.com. It's Smart Approaches to Marijuana, Vermont.
I'll try to put up a graphic for that.
That would be great. It's wonderful, really, really incredible resources there and information about the impact of marijuana.
One thing that I read recently, and I wish I'd have clipped it out and brought it in, was that here in Vermont they're seeing more emergency room admissions for marijuana-induced problems. Mm-hmm. Problems they're having with people coming in that that are on marijuana or whatever. And I would imagine this would have to be some of the more radical cases, but still, they still happen.
They do.
And the other thing that I wanted to share with you was, if you remember Prohibition, way back in the 20s, neither one of us, by the way, we're not that old. I mean, I'm not even that old, and I'm old. But I remember reading up all about that. In the short term, alcoholism went down. But what happened was they couldn't really enforce it. And the other thing was they found out they could tax the heck out of it. Mm-hmm. And a lot of very rich businessmen said, instead of me paying taxes on my business, why don't we make this legal again and tax the heck out of it? And that seems to be one of the arguments that's being used for marijuana, isn't it?
It is, Terry, and actually that's one of the other bigger reasons why this whole thing bothers me, is because I really feel that as a state we're looking at this because for money. We're seeing it as, our legislators are seeing it as a way to make money versus looking at what is best for the people in our state. And that's really discouraging. And especially because we know from Colorado and Washington State that it doesn't bear out. We're not going to, in the long run, make any money off of marijuana because the healthcare costs are going to far outweigh what we can bring in revenue.
Oh, yeah. I would. And by the way, that statistic I told you about emergency room admissions, that was Colorado, not Vermont. That was what I was reading, was Colorado. Now they've really regulated marijuana growth and sale. They really have a lot of tight regulations in Colorado, don't they?
They do.
But there's still,
and they've seen, the increase in youth smoking rates has gone up dramatically. They've seen a big increase in DUIs in those states. So we need to learn from the people who have already done it. And if we're paying attention, if we take our time and we learn from those states, why would we do this?
Well, I think you nailed it when you said people are seeing that we can't stop it, so therefore let's make money on it, which is probably, I don't think, the best approach, although it might actually be something you should look at, because if it's something you really can't stop altogether, maybe in my opinion, I think prevention and education is not utilized well enough, especially in our schools. What's been your experience with that?
We are not doing a good job. We're not doing nearly a good enough job, Terry. And that was actually one of the things that Mr. Zuckerman had said to me, is that it would bring in money to do prevention in schools. And I said, I'm sorry, but I don't believe you. And I don't, because if that was the case, then we would be doing a much better job with the tobacco dollars that we bring in and the revenue from alcohol. Are we doing that now?
Well, I can tell you this much. I have offered my time for free to several area schools that I won't mention, and someday I will mention them. But I've offered my time for free, and nobody wants me to give a lecture. The only school that ever had me give a lecture was Lake Region, and that was because one teacher had me come into her health class 3 times. She's retired since, but no other school has invited me in, and I keep telling them that I will do this for free, and I'll give them this information, and it's almost like they're in denial of sorts. What's been your experience?
Well, in our area, when we reach out to schools, and we do, they're pretty open to us. So the problem for us is we don't have the resources anymore since the state cut the SAP funding.
Okay.
So very few schools across Vermont receive the SAP funding. And so we don't have a lot of resources. So, for example, when I come here to talk about an issue like marijuana, I'm coming on my own time. The only dollars that we receive, which are very small right now, are from tobacco dollars. And so schools are often calling us and wanting us to come in and do things. And so when we do, we're doing that voluntarily. We do not have any dollars right now that are paying for that time. But I do find that our schools want that. They know their kids need it. It's just we're lacking in resources.
Yeah, I find that you just brought up something that I didn't have that written down as a question, but I just found it interesting that so many dollars are coming in for prevention of tobacco use, but they seem to be ignoring marijuana use, alcohol use. I just find that I just can't wrap my head around that.
And also, wrap your head around this one, Terry.
Yeah.
We, as in Vermont, we received a D from the American Lung Association when it comes to prevention of tobacco, meaning how many dollars that we're spending of our tobacco funds on prevention. A D.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but as I recall from my many years of study when I was in the field, smoking marijuana shrinks the hippocampus Is that true?
Oh boy, I'm not that's not something I should speak to, Terry. I wish I could.
Well, from what I remember, it shrinks the hippocampus, which is where you store long-term memory. And short-term memory. And then after a while, short-term memory loss ends up in long-term memory loss. And from what I have read, once you stop smoking marijuana, the hippocampus doesn't go back to normal size. It just doesn't happen. So that might be a side effect that we could use to say, something, you're smoking yourself stupid.
Now, would that be part of the IQ? The decrease in IQ? Because that's been well proven. And that's what before I came in, I was reading on that again and thinking, okay, yeah, that you're right. So we banned lead when we found out that it impacts IQ. Well, we know that marijuana use impacts IQ when people use it before the age of 18. And that's who is using it.
Yeah.
Like 80% of all new users are under the age of 18.
Yeah, and some even as young as 10, 11, 12.
Yes.
And even in adult life, I would imagine it definitely isn't going to help you.
Right.
But like you and I do agree on the fact that for medical use, if someone is terminally ill, cancer patients, AIDS patients like that, it does have a good medical use.
It does.
Yeah, and I would never try to talk somebody out of using it for that. Although there are other medicines that have been used, and from what I've been told, they're not as effective. Like Marinol D5, from what I've been told, isn't as effective. I guess Marinol D5 is one of the elements in marijuana that's supposed to help nausea or whatever, but I was told that some people it really flips them out. So are you familiar with that one?
I'm not, no.
Okay. Well, in your experience, we're going to go back to this other question. In your experience, you've seen physical addiction to marijuana, correct?
I have, yes.
Okay. Can you explain what that looks like? Because I've seen it a couple of times also.
So, as with other addictions, when people are physically addicted to it, if they'll know it because when they don't have it, they'll have symptoms such as headaches, they'll feel irritable. That's the one I noticed the most is the irritability, like anxious. I'm very anxious.
Yeah.
And they can't sleep. Things like that. That's what I have heard and witnessed and seen with people the most is the anxiety and the irritability. Just like
I've seen some mild tremors, some mild shaking. Nothing like with alcohol though, but I've seen some mild shaking and even some sweating. And all I can say, like I said, I'd never seen that up until towards the end of my time as a counselor. But it's like, oh yeah. This now I'm seeing this firsthand with excessive use. So. What sort of counseling techniques do you use with a person who is a marijuana addict? And is it any different between them and other substances that are abused?
For me, it's not very different. The two that I see or I feel work the best are cognitive behavior therapy and person-centered. Person-centered, I think, is really important, Terry, because we have to meet people where they're at. Somebody who comes in and they're just totally like, no way, they are not on the same page of this as me at all. We're completely opposite ends. I need to do some things, some education, and some listening, and just really building a relationship with this person to figure out why are you even here, And there usually is a connection, and they'll be the ones to say, how it's impacting them in their family, and it does. How is it impacting them at work? Which we didn't even talk about that, Terry. And there's lots of stuff. A lot of businesses in Vermont are concerned about this because they have to test people. They're doing drug tests before they're hiring people. And if marijuana becomes legal, they're concerned that it's going to shrink the pool of people that they can bring on board. So we didn't even touch that.
Oh yeah, I was going to get to that, but first I was going to ask: do you feel marijuana is a gateway drug?
Yeah, I do. Yes.
Some people, like I said, some people, that's all they do is they smoke some pot and then that's it. Other people, it starts them on a path to other things. But in the workplace, I've got to tell you that I used to work at a woodworking shop in North Walpole, New Hampshire in 1977. And there were two guys who smoked every break, every lunch, every break, and then on the way home. And Can you address, what sort of problems will this cause in the workplace?
Well, it can be very dangerous if you can't focus and you can't pay attention to your job and you're working with machinery. I mean, it can be really dangerous. So people, I think, more injuries, if lack attention to detail in what you're doing, people not being able to show up to work, more illness, all sorts of things.
There has to be respiratory problems too.
Yes. So, and that's a big one, that people don't think about. When people smoke marijuana, they're consuming a lot more tar. So, people know that, when they think about cigarette use, that the lungs get black, they collect tar. Well, if you smoke marijuana, you collect even more tar than you do just smoking cigarettes.
Yeah, I think about the only thing marijuana doesn't have is nicotine.
Right.
and that's about it. I just got to tell you a funny thing. When I did work at that woodworking shop, these two guys developed a condition called gynecomastia, if you know what that is.
No, I do not.
Okay. Gynecomastia is men growing breasts like women from excessive marijuana use. And I only saw it I've only seen it twice, but evidently marijuana will suppress testosterone. And as a result, these guys started taking on different, slightly different shapes. And to me, I kind of chuckled because it was really odd, very odd thing to see. I want to thank you for your time. I think this is extremely important. And was there anything else that you wanted to add before we sign off? We don't have to sign off immediately, but...
Terry, I just want to end with, because I get kind of passionate about this topic and can sound a little over the top sometimes, but
I don't think you are.
I just want people to think about, as adults, we have a special obligation to our young people. And we need to ask ourselves, what are we doing as adults that can either help or hinder our children? And if as at the state level we are saying that this thing is so okay that we want to legalize it, we're sending the wrong message to our young people, who are the ones who are going to be most impacted by this decision that we're going to make. And I just want people to think about that.
Can we also have your contact information?
Yes.
One more time.
Anyone who wants to talk to me can call me at 748-7532.
Okay. Do you have a website?
Well, you can go to Northeastern Vermont Regional website, so it's nvrh.org. But the best way to get us is just directly call me at the 748-7532.
Okay. It was great to have you on again, and we're going to do this again for sure. I would have to say probably in about a month or so. We're going to pick up on the subject of heroin abuse and the problems that it's causing, and evidently it's gotten a lot worse even since when I was a counselor. It was getting very bad back then. So are you up for that?
I would love to do that.
Okay, we will definitely book that in. I want to thank you once again, Rose. It was a pleasure having you on. It's a half-hour show, but Rose and I could go on and on and on about this, and so we will have to do it again in about a month or so. Thank you much. This is Terry Difazio for Dial It Up saying we'll catch you on the flip side and have a good day. Bye now.